Hey everyone, welcome back to Ducks and Download. So today we're going to be going over nothing too major, just a nice, small, simple topic, the Force. What is the Force? Well, it is apparently some type of omniscient or just omnipotent will of fate that exists within the galaxy far, far away. We learned that it is actually a creature or small single-celled organism known as a midichlorian that actually determines if someone is going to be able to use the Force or at least hear it. Throughout the Star Wars universe, there are plenty of characters who cannot completely use the Force, like a Jedi or Sith, but they have the ability to kind of hear its call, and which really helps them to navigate through space or to be really good at gambling. A lot of smugglers are very connected to the Force, but don't even know it. There are also entire races of creatures and humanoids that are completely force sensitive. We have from KOTOR 2, Visa's people with no eyes. They actually see entirely just through the Force. It's really cool. You can go to her in first person view, and everything is like this weird tinge of bluish gray. And then the Force or Force objects, things with attunement to the Force, glow really brightly. It's really cool. There are the Talortal, a bird people, which are all extremely Force sensitive. And there are others that actually are very Force sensitive, but view the Force as such a religious and holy thing that you're not even allowed to touch it. If you try to access the Force, it's seen as being a demon or a heretic. So the Force is pretty much the God. It is what most religions in the Star Wars universe are based around, this force of will, which is more than likely why it's called the Force, because it's supposed to be a mysterious background kind of constantly pushing narratives. That is why, again, in KOTOR 2, Kreia, or Darth Treya, actually wants to destroy the Force. She understands that the reason the Sith and the Jedi are constantly fighting, and that the entire galaxy is in turmoil on multiple occasions, is due to the Force itself pushing its agenda onto the living creatures to rebalance itself or to move things the way the Force feels it needs to be done. Is the Force an actual creature or an actual entity? We have no idea. We do know in the Clone Wars arc that there were three aspects of the Force or embodiments of it: the father, the son, and the daughter. In Legends, we also have the mother, Abeloth, but we'll get into that later. Really cool character, but sadly not canonized yet. So we have the father, who represents balance. He is a very wise, regal figure who is always there to mediate between the daughter and the son. The daughter is the embodiment of the light side. She is everything good and hopeful and healing. The son is the opposite. The son is the embodiment of pure darkness. He is malice and hate and power and greed. On the Mortis arc, we actually get to see Anakin destroy and dominate all three of them. He is, of course, the chosen one, and as the chosen one, the Force is so strong in him to rebalance the galaxy that he can pretty much do anything in his original state. He loses a lot of his Force powers when he becomes Darth Vader due to the fact that all the midichlorians that were in his blood vessels and the body parts that got chopped up and burnt off, he lost all of those. So he was nowhere near as powerful as he used to be. He actually loses his number one power, which was his Force sight. That's why he was able to see into the future to see Padme's death and his mother's death, is because of the Force. He loses that ability after the duel on Mustafar. The son is kind of a bit more of the extreme side, though, of the dark side. To me, the dark side is not pure hatred or pure greed. It is allowing the hatred of evil or the greed of peace. It can really be construed because it's like a religion in that sense. It's all from a certain point of view. Whereas the Jedi view the Sith as just malicious, evil conquerors, the Empire and the Sith Empires viewed themselves as liberators, as order, bringing systems to the chaotic worlds of the galaxy. And they view the Jedi as just a bunch of hippies sitting around in circles not doing anything about all the problems in the universe. The Jedi do, of course, try to help, to bring peace, and to heal all worlds, entities, people, planets, whatever they can, to help the flow of the Force in their eyes. But they are just as dogmatic as any of the other Force users. The Jedi might view themselves as the light of the Republic, but that's just it. They're only the light for the Republic. That's the problem where Revan and Malak, where Bane, where so many of these Sith Lords saw this issue inside of the Jedi Code. Whereas the Jedi felt like they didn't want to overstep their bounds and be rulers, the Sith say, no, screw that. We are literally almost gods. It is the rule of the powerful to conquer over the weak, not because the weak need ruled, entirely because the weak cannot sustain themselves without the powerful to help them. The Sith are also into culling those weak ones so that only the strong survive, so that there's more things for the strong to use and to prosper from. So yes, the Sith kill a lot of people. But, as Darth Bane says in the Bane books, oh, what a surprise. Who knew that the Sith would shoot at you as you're busy shooting at them? That's the real issue here, is that you have two sides of a spectrum here that are so opposite they'll never see eye to eye. Not because they can't, simply because they won't. Mace Windu is one of the only Jedi who actually kind of allows his darkness to be a force of use. He has his own form he invented, and he has a shatter point. He has all these powers to use his darkness. Form, I believe, 7 Vespa. He uses all of that darkness channels it to become strength to beat other people in duels, battles, military objectives, stuff like that. And there are plenty of dark side users who have the ability to force heal and to help people, and they do so. Look at Revan. Revan was an absolute amalgamation of balance, kind of like how Ahsoka Tano becomes. A lot of people, you can really tell through Jedi and Sith, when they get spurned by the side they're a part of, they begin to realize very quickly it's not about the dogmatic view of the Jedi or the oppressive view of the Sith. It's about somewhere in between. It's the ability to use anger and hatred for bad people doing bad things to stop them, to help the people they're oppressing. It's about using your peace of mind and serenity to come up with a good decision and not run into battle in haste and fury, because most people don't win that fight. The first to strike is usually the first struck down. Or as they say, the nail that protrudes the most gets hammered first. That's one of the main problems with the dark side. They do breed this mentality of might equals right. So you have a lot of Sith killing each other and backstabbing one another to prove how much right or how much more correct they are than the other Sith, which doesn't actually mean they are, it just means they got the upper hand on somebody. That's where the Sith eventually fall, and then we get the rule of 2, which again, I think is bogus. You don't need only 2 Sith, you just need better Sith. Now with the Jedi Code, where it's all about peace and harmony and serenity, those are all good things, but if you're allowing corporations to sell Wookiees into slavery and Twi'leks into slavery, and you don't do anything to stop it, you're not actually upholding justice and upholding peace. You're upholding what the Republic says is peace. The Republic outlawed the dark side. You can't outlaw the Force. That's not how that works. That's why the Force is constantly like, well, we'll see about that, and they send a bunch of Sith. The Jedi have been this almost, it turned into a cancer. At first it was just a bunch of cells, a bunch of entities that would move around the galaxy helping it heal itself and do what it needed to, until it eventually became corrupted like a cancer. Now, a lot of people would say this is because the Jedi Temple is actually built on top of an ancient Sith temple over a nexus point on Coruscant's highest mountain. Beautiful backstory there. Speaking of that backstory, though, this is where we're really going to get into an idea of balance. We finally get to see or hear about in the High Republic Fallen Star book, which is the newest version of canon for Tython, aside from The Mandalorian Season 2, which they don't really visit much of Tython besides that one rock. But on Tython, there are 2 moons, Ashla, which is a nexus of the light side, and Bogan, which is a nexus for the dark side. If a Jedi back in the original Jedi Order ever went too heavy into one or the other side, not being able to pick up their saber and defend or kill who needed to be struck down, or going out and just slaughteringly, namelessly, then they had to go to the opposing moon to study and to meditate until they were healed back into what they considered the Bendu, the balance of the Force. That is where we also, in the Rebels, we get the Bendu itself, is that the Bendu they spoke of on Tython? We don't know. Is the Bendu took that name because it is simply just a Force-attuned creature who enjoys balance? Maybe. Balance is where the Force always wants to strive. But it's much like our world government. We all have beautiful ideas, and we all have amazing agendas and plans in the beginning, but eventually humans do what humans do best, and greed and emotions start to bleed into rational thought, and then they eventually go so far that you can no longer call it rational. It's the same thing. The Republic is forcing the Jedi not to pick up wars with random people, not to defend small settlements being picked up by Trandoshan slavers, because they don't want to start a huge galactic war. They don't want to end support from certain corporations. Zerka pays a lot of Republic officials off and also makes a lot of Republic planets all the money they could ever have. So that's why places don't really care as much about the slavery trade, even though it's illegal. It is entirely illegal in the Republic to sell slaves, but they do nothing to stop it, because they know if they go after Zerka, then all that money that Zerka brings into the Republic is gone. The Jedi don't do it for no other reason than the Republic Senate told them no. Yoda speaks about this a lot, where he talks about how, speaking with Anakin and how Anakin, views just tell people what to do, Yoda thinks that that is not the Jedi way, because a Jedi should not tell anyone how to live. Yes, that's true, but there's a difference in demanding people to be indentured servants and demanding people to never allow that to happen and striking down those that do. But again, slippery slope. It could very easily eventually lead to a dictatorship, to another empire. So that is the issue that the Jedi always see. They view everything as that slippery slope that can lead only to the dark side. Whereas the dark side sees it's not a slippery slope, it's a staircase. The dark side's view on the Force is to control it and to dominate it, to use it at your will. The light side's view is to allow the Force to flow and move through you to make an objective clearer. The Sith don't care about clear, the Sith care about results. The Force is really the main antagonist and protagonist of the Star Wars universe, but for that background Force, kind of like within D&D or within a lot of other RPG games where the gods keep meddling with the world they control to try and get an agenda or try to get a plan played out to get eventually most people to an ultimate utopia, to a world where no one needs or wants. The Force doesn't really care though about needs or wants, because the Force understands that when you die, you're just going to become a part of it. It's kind of almost like, Kreia says, in which the Force really does use the entire galaxy to its will. So in the end, you can understand to a degree, or from a certain point of view, why Kreia really understood that the only way to purify the galaxy of the war and strife is to completely cut off the Force. Would that cause everything to implode? We have no idea. It's hard to tell because there are so many planets and objects in the Star Wars universe that are these Force nexuses that only exist because the Force is on that planet holding it all together. I mean, we have planets like Mustafar that used to be lush, green, thriving worlds, but the jealousy and greed and need of one dark side user turned it into a planet of rocks and lava. It's crazy the power the Force has. Galen Merrick, Starkiller, watching him grab a Star Destroyer, pull it down into an orbit, and then stop it before it hits him. That's ridiculous. But that's the Force itself is just this weird power that is constantly thriving to explode, but is also trying to remain contained. It's like the Force itself doesn't have control over itself. So you can kind of tell there's a lot of talking in circles. There's a lot of big-headed what ideas. You can sit around and talk about the Force like philosophers in ancient Greek for hours and hours and never understand anything and never get any further into truly mastering it. Jedi Masters have spent hundreds of years, Yoda almost 1,000, trying to master the Force, and he's learning things every single day. We have Vitiate, Emperor Vitiate, who literally lived over a couple thousand years through essence transfer, and he still was not a full-fledged like dark side master of all things, he still learned things from the outsider, and the outside learned things from him. The Force is going to be a constant fluctuation until it's either completely balanced and everything is removed, like cyborg style, from these creatures to where they don't ever express more than they should, which will never happen, leading into the fact, and that's why we're always going to have Star Wars. We're always going to have things in the Star Wars universe. We're always going to have movies and shows because the Force is constantly ebb and flow. It's not that the Force wants to really maintain itself forever. It just wants to get back to normal. It's a house divided trying to bring things back together, but the problem is the more it works on one side to balance it, it becomes overbalanced, and then the other side must rise to overbalance itself. It will more than likely never hit a true Bendu state of pure balance. Some creatures might, but then again there's the difference. It is the individual that uses the Force in their want and will that shapes the Force around them, creating their own little Force bubbles and universe in that midichlorian count. While the Force from the greater scale uses all those little individuals using the Force the way they do to create this sense of balance and prosperity in itself and of itself. So, if any of that made any sense or all of it went over your head, let me know in the comment section down below. There is a lot to talk about in the Force, and I look very forward to doing more episodes on it. Thank you very much for stopping by, and I hope you all have an amazing day.